Welcome back to the Hip Replacement Podcast. This is the fifth and final episode in our special 5-part series based on the themes from my book, New Steel. And throughout the series, we talked about 5 ideas that came from my own experience of having 2 hip replacements, going through the recovery, and then rebuilding my life afterwards. We talked about the idea that there is life after hip replacement. We talked about fear being normal, but not letting it get the final vote or control us. We talked about recovery being built one small win at a time. And we talked about how your setback, your surgery itself, and your recovery may become someone else's survival guide. And today, we're finishing one of the biggest mental challenges or shifts of all. Stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? Now, let me say this before anyone gets too irritated and throws a crutch or walker at me. I started my own hip replacement journey, so to speak, with being in denial. I thought, this can't be happening to me. Not me. Why me? Why am I going through this? There has to be some mistake. I was totally focused on the past or what's going on right now. I didn't have the luxury of looking forward because looking forward just didn't occur to me yet. And it's completely reasonable to be in denial or to ask, why me? Why am I going through this? When something difficult happens, especially something involving fear or an injury or surgery or the loss of mobility, our brain naturally looks for an explanation. It tries to rationalize things. Why did this happen? Why now? Why my hip? Why my body? Why am I dealing with this when other people don't have to deal with this? These are all human questions. And sometimes we just need to sit with them for a while. You're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to be disappointed. You're allowed to grieve the version of life you thought you were supposed to have. You're allowed to be mad at your hip or at life. So this episode is not about pretending why me never happens or that it's a bad position to be in. It does happen. But there's a way to get past that. And there's another question to ask later. The problem is when we get stuck there with why me and consider ourselves a victim, that life is happening to us. Something is happening to us and we have no control over it. Because why me? The question, why me? Why is this happening to me? May be understandable, but it's not useful in the long term. It's not useful when trying to put your life back together. It's not useful when trying to build something better. It looks backwards in the past. It highlights the pain. It focuses on this concept of unfairness. And while all those things may be real, they usually don't help us take the next step. They don't help us get to the next level. And at some point, we have to start looking forward. When we do that, when we refocus on the future, on the forward, on what's possible, the question becomes, what now? Not woe is me, what now is going to happen. The question is more, what now? What can I do? Where can I take my life to make it better? What can I do? What now can I do to improve my situation? And that question is powerful because what now gives you hope? What now gives you accountability? What now gives you options? What now brings your attention back to what you can control? What now gives you power because your brain will start looking for solutions? And when you are facing hip replacement, control is important. You want to control as much as you possibly can in a seemingly uncertain situation. Before my first surgery, I spent time in denial, long time, years. I tried to avoid the truth. I tried different treatments. I hoped something would fix the problem and help me avoid a surgery because I couldn't possibly need a hip replacement, not at my age. And I understand why I was doing that. I understand why I was in denial, because surgery's scary. Hip replacement sounded like something that should happen later in life. Not when I was in my 30s, maybe when I was in my 60s or 70s, but certainly not when I was in my 30s. I didn't want the label of a hip replacement patient. I didn't want that identity. I didn't want to feel defective, and I didn't want other people to see me as defective. I didn't want to go through any of that. But the pain kept getting worse. My mobility kept decreasing. My world kept shrinking. I could do less and less. Couldn't walk very far. Couldn't engage in the activities that I wanted to engage in. And eventually the question had to change. Instead of only asking why this was happening to me, I had to ask, what now? What are my options now? What do the doctors say? What happens if I do nothing? What happens if the hip gets worse? Which surgeon should I choose? Which approach makes the most sense for me? How do I prepare for this? How do I recover to the best of my ability? What outcome do I want? Those questions, really all based on the question of what now, helped move me forward. They didn't remove all the fear. It's not a magic pill. They didn't make the surgery any easier, but they gave me a way to participate in my own future. And that is something very different than feeling helpless. And I think this is one of the most important lessons for hip replacement patients. You cannot control everything. You can't control the diagnosis. You can't control the fact that your joint wore out or was damaged. You can't control the exact speed of recovery. You can't control every ache, every challenge, or every unexpected detour. But you're not powerless. You can choose to get informed. You can choose to ask more and better questions. You can choose to prepare your body and your home. You can choose to line up to support other people that could help you. You can choose to follow the medical guidance. You can choose to take physical therapy seriously. You can choose to move carefully. You can choose to rest and be patient even when you don't feel like it. You can choose to stop comparing your recovery to everyone else's because everyone else always seems to move faster. Not really true, but when you read it online, that's what it seems. You can choose to keep your focus on the kind of life that you want to return to or the kind of life that you want to build. That's ownership of your recovery. And ownership is where confidence begins. That all starts with asking the question, what now? One of the things I want people to understand is that taking ownership doesn't mean blaming yourself. Those are very different things. We're past any point of blaming yourself. This isn't about saying, this is my fault. That's not helpful. It may not even be true. It may not be your fault. It probably is not your fault. Taking ownership means saying and accepting, this is my situation now. I may not have chosen it. I may not like it. I may need help, but I still have choices. And mentally, that's a very strong place to stand. The question of what now can apply to every stage of the hip replacement journey. Before surgery, what now? I need to get clear information. I need to understand my options. I need to talk with my surgeon, or maybe a second surgeon or a third surgeon, if possible. I need to prepare my home, my body, as best I can. What about right after surgery? What now? What can I do now? I need to heal. I need to be patient. I need to follow instructions. I need to move safely and with intent. I need to manage pain appropriately. I need to ask for help when needed. What about during physical therapy? What now? I need to rebuild strength. I need to improve flexibility. I need to be consistent. I need to avoid doing too much too soon. What about later in recovery? What now? I need to maintain my hips. I need to stay active. I need to build a lifestyle that supports the life I want. What about even years after surgery, 5, 10 years? What now? I need to keep moving. I need to protect my health for the long term. I need to use this second chance of mobility as best and as well as I can. The question of what now keeps opening doors, so to speak, in your recovery and your future. And sometimes the answer is not really dramatic. Sometimes it's not really big. Sometimes what now means taking a walk, doing small exercises, drinking more water, going to bed, calling the doctor for help, or asking someone else in your network for help. Another important part of what now is realizing what your future, or realizing that your future doesn't have to be defined by the hardest thing you went through. Yes, the hip replacement may be part of your life story. It may be the hardest part of your life story. It's certainly part of mine. It's a big part. But that's not the whole story. That's not the whole book. The hip replacement is just one small piece over a very long time. You're still allowed to have goals. You're still allowed to accomplish whatever you want. You're still allowed to want more in life. You're still allowed to be active. You're still allowed to become a stronger version of yourself. Maybe that's the biggest message from New Steel and from this whole 5-part series. Life can knock you down, for sure. Your body can surprise you in ways you didn't ask for. Pain can humble you. Surgery can scare you. Recovery can test your patience. But none of that means that your best days are automatically behind you. You may simply need to adjust. You may need to rebuild strength. You may need to ask for help more. You may need to go slower than you really want. You may need to modify the activities you love. You may need to expand into new activities, which you may love more than you expected. You may need to accept that the path forward in your life doesn't look like the path you expected. But, and this is key, different going forward does not mean worse. Different can still be meaningful. Different can still be beautiful. Different can still be full of movement, connection, laughter, confidence, purpose, excitement. Different, listen here, different may mean better than life would have been without this challenge in your life. Consider that. After a hip replacement, your life may become better than it would have been without. Maybe you have a different perspective. Maybe you're getting support and you're establishing relationships with people that you would not have otherwise. Maybe you're moving towards different activities that you never would have tried. Maybe you're taking better care of your health. So for the rest of your life, you would be in better health than you would have if you didn't have this surgery. So a different path forward can certainly mean better. So as we close this 5-part series, I want to leave you with this. If you're stuck in why me, or this can't be happening to me right now, give yourself some patience and some grace. Be easy on yourself. You're not wrong for feeling like that, but don't stay there forever. Progress. When you're ready, ask the next question. What now? What's the next step that I can take to help myself physically, mentally, or emotionally? What support do I need? What information do I need? What kind of life do I want after this? What would make me feel more confident? What small win can I build today? And that's when things begin to change. I know you can do it. Thanks so much for sticking with me on this 5-part series. This has been the 5th and final episode in our 5-part series based on the themes from my book, New Steel. We covered a lot of different topics. We covered life after hip replacement, fear, small wins, helping others through sharing your story, and the shift from asking, why me, to what now? Thank you for joining me in this series. It's been a pleasure to share the 5 themes from New Steel. And wherever you are in your journey, before surgery maybe, after surgery, years down the road, or supporting someone you love, I hope this series helped you feel a little more seen, a little more encouraged, and a little less alone. Thank you so much for tuning into the Hip Replacement Podcast. Until next time, I wish you the best recovery possible. Take care.